Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, bumper packed episode today. Plenty to talk about, especially for those on Spotify and Apple. But how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Busy week. It's really weird considering that there's not a whole lot of incoming rumours flying around. There's still so much happening in the Villa sphere. And I think that's because we've kind of had this break. We've had this little rest. It's FA Cup weekend and stuff like that. So it just feels like things are really moving at a fair rate of knots. And although there's not been anything crazy, as I say, on the kind of incomings front, there's definitely a lot happening elsewhere, a few outgoings and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into this one with you, mate, because yeah, there's certainly a lot to talk about. Least of which is the small matter that we play Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in the FA Cup fourth round tomorrow. That's kind of a footnote in all of this, which is kind of crazy.
It is, mate. It is. And I think that ties in perfectly, really, with the first point with JHON DURAN. What on earth is going on there? This situation seems to have escalated tenfold since the last time you and I were able to come and sit down and talk about this, mate, because there was this rumoured interest from Chelsea and it was kind of coming from maybe some publications that aren't as reliable, names which are slipping off, the top of my head at the moment. But we sort of had it confirmed yesterday, didn't we, mate, by Matt Law, who, for those of you who don't know, Matt works for The Independent. Matt is a Villa fan, but Matt covers Chelsea predominantly for The Independent. So I feel like that's as solid a link as you're going to get, right? You've got somebody who's very in the know when it comes to both camps, both on and off the field. And, he's reported that Chelsea do have interest in bringing in JHON DURAN. And it seems like all of this sort of sits on Armando Broja's shoulders, really, and their plans with him. And I think what is... the math doesn't math, right? Because if you're looking at both players right now, being completely objective, Armando Broja, like you said the other day, mate, is right now a far better proposition than JHON DURAN is right now. So why would they even contemplate selling one to bring in the other? Obviously, financial fair play is looming over everybody's head, it seems. I feel like we're only 1 week away from something coming out of Villa. Aston Villa are being under investigation for financial fair play, but it's one of them, isn't it? And I can't get my head around. I mean, I can and I can't, right? Because and we even said this the other week, didn't we, mate? Chelsea are going to want 40-50 mil for Broja, right? And that's going to be pure profit because he is obviously a part of their setup at Cobham. That's 100% pure profit in terms of how that looks on the balance sheet, which is obviously an understandable reason why you would sell Armando Broja. But bringing in JHON DURAN, and this isn't to sort of beat up on JHON DURAN at all, because if you're new to the podcast, it has to be stated on the record that I am a big admirer of JHON DURAN, and I think there is a future there. This kind of crazy transfer just doesn't really seem real. Doesn't this feel like a bit of a football manager move? And it's not the first time we've said that with Todd Bowley transfers, is it, mate?
Well, this is really an interesting one. I think it's Villa are kind of hamstrung by the market that we're in, right? And that we're in January. It's very difficult to go out and buy a striker. If Chelsea match or offer us more than we originally bought JHON DURAN for, we actually bought him for a little less than I thought, according to Transfermarkt. Transfermarkt had it in around 17 million euro. I had in my head it was just over 20 million pounds. But either way, it's kind of in that benchmark. If Chelsea did come back and say, yeah, we'll give you 25, I think you have him in the next taxi down to London. I really do, because I think it's a chance to, as you say, get some profit in. It's a chance to capitalise on, I think, as you rightly say, the jury, I don't know if it's hard to say the jury's still kind of out on JHON DURAN, but the jury's definitely still out on whether he's happy at the football club, which kind of supersedes everything. It doesn't matter how good this kid is. If he's not happy, if there is a little bit of unrest, if some of the rumours, and they are rumours, that, he's been a bit disgruntled, that there's been occasionally some words with Unai about his playing time and everything like that. If that is genuinely the case, then if Chelsea come in and offer you more than you originally paid for him just 12 months ago, I think you sell. I really do. But the problem that creates then for Villa is that we have to scramble around with less than a week left on the market to buy a striker, and we would have to do that. I think the sole reason that we're so keen to keep hold of JHON DURAN, which is something that Unai has already insisted the club are keen to do. We've already rebuffed one loan move from West Ham, it seems. So we're definitely keen to keep hold of JHON DURAN. And that's because if Ollie Watkins does get injured, who fills his shoes? Who plays up front? And it's not just a case of, oh, like, who's the next best? It's we don't have another option. And it's as simple as that. And so if we were like let go of JHON DURAN, not only would we have, 4 or 5 days by the time the transfer goes through to find a replacement, but we'd also have to find a replacement, in the January market and in a market that knows we just received, 25, 30 million pounds for a striker of our own, on top of the fact that we're already a Premier League club. FFP is a really interesting one. I definitely do think that player revenue is going to be a huge source of our income. We had all of the financial records and stuff like that published the other day. Deloitte did their study and stuff like that. And you look at something like match day revenue for Villa, which is down at just £16 million. For context, Man United 136 million, Spurs 106 million, West Ham 41, Chelsea 69, Man City 72, Liverpool 81. Even Leicester made £21 million in match day revenue last season, and they got relegated. It just goes to show that it's these kind of initiatives that, not to go off on a tangent, but like the lower grounds and everything like that, when you paint this picture of what the club is bringing in outside of the footballing sphere, it's not a fat lot. It's not a fat lot. And so we really need to make that up in other areas, and player sales is going to be a big part of that. That's why Cam Archer and JPB and all these kind of guys, they're not on loans, they're on these permanent deals. And I think it's to try and make up for what we're losing in other areas of the football club. So again, I think if someone does put 25 million on the line for JHON DURAN, I do think you take it. It's just how confident the club are of finding a replacement. I was kind of considering it the other day. I was like, it's crazy, but how much is that buyback clause for someone like Cameron Archer? Can you, if you can activate that and bring him in for less than JHON DURAN, do you consider that? I don't know, but it's crazy that what kind of Chelsea are willing to pay that much for someone that's as raw as JHON DURAN is, and he is really raw. But at the same time, as you rightly say, but considering their transfer strategy, I'm not all too surprised, which is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is here, you have to consider it if there is genuine potential. Given Chelsea's track record of overspending, you've said 25, you could potentially even get 30. Just with, these guys seemingly don't know how to negotiate. So it's one of them where I guess nothing is really off the table, right? And it's an interesting point you make about Cam, because I feel like I read that there is a mandatory buyback of 18, maybe 16 million. Whatever it was 2 million less than what we sold him for. Should Sheffield United get relegated, which, looking at the table as it stands now, it looks very probable. So it's one of them. We may be forced to buy a striker in the summer anyway. So it's a crazy situation. It's crazy how it's evolved, how it's going to evolve as well. And I think this potentially holds up the Morgan Rogers deal as well, because we've sort of clapped back with this third bid, and Borough seemingly want more money. We're talking 10, 12 million pounds now. And as you rightly said, mate, when teams know you've got money, all of a sudden players come a bit more expensive. And as infuriating as that is, that's just the reality of the situation. I tried a similar tactic in Monopoly the other day. I bought everyone's final card up that they needed, and I tried to charge people an exuberant amount of money to purchase said cards off me, and it massively backfired. So hopefully, take note, Middlesbrough. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You will get absolutely fisted like I did in Monopoly. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of analysis you guys come to the Villa for. So yeah, Monopoly updates the lot. And I think it's kind of, we didn't sort of set this as the agenda, mate. I'm springing this on you right now. Duran goes, right? Do you go and sign another player, not of that mould, but of that profile, do you go and get somebody for relatively cheap who you can sort of polish up and build into your perfect striker? Because I think we're looking at the right back, whose name I've already forgotten because he's gone back on loan to Red Star, that we've signed. We're looking at Rodgers. The strategy, as we alluded to the other day, has sort of pivoted, and I think that is partially due to the financial situations and strengths that I guess we find ourselves in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this is the thing, as you rightly say, with the Premier League club, it's just so much harder. I mean, I had to kind of, almost double take the other day on social. There was a loan move. Borja Iglesias went from Real Betis to Leverkusen on loan with a permanent option. I think it was I know, which is a crazy deal for an 8 million clause, which is not even mandatory. It's a £1 million loan fee and an €8 million clause. So what is that? £6-7 million. This is someone, Real Betis joining a club that's top of the Bundesliga, 174 goals, 23 assists in 418 club games. Real Betis, I think a few seasons ago, albeit I know he's 31, bought him for around €30 million, letting him go for about 8 million. There's no way, if that's a Premier League club, it's that cheap. There's just no way. And so you always see these deals on the continent and you think, oh, so there is value in the January transfer market, but it's just so much more difficult in reality than that. And I think when you look at kind of the deals that we've done previously in the January transfer window, even since we got promoted to the Premier League, you look at someone like Borja Baston or Danny Drinkwater or something like that. Like clubs do panic and they are forced into these kind of low budget, really bizarre transfer deals just to try and get someone through the door. And I think I was kind of saying this to a friend the other day. I was like, I am surprised we haven't done more January business than we have, considering the position that we're in the table. It's kind of like we've got not quite once in a lifetime, but definitely kind of once in the first time this millennium we're in a real Champions League fight. And I don't mean that we're sick with the potential to pump up, but like we're here, we're in the Champions League spots with however many games to go. Is it worth a 20-30 million pound roll of the dice, a couple of buys, maybe one or two real bits of quality to try and push you over the line? But I think given how hard the Premier League have come down on clubs like Everton, like Nottingham Forest on financial fair play, it's been a really quiet transfer window for the Premier League as a whole this January. There's not been many deals going on. I think that is probably down to the fact that the league is just scared right now. The league has seen kind of how the points deductions are where it really hits the clubs, and no club will want that. And I can't imagine a way with even like Jack Sale, and I know guys like Carney and JPB and Cam Archer and stuff like that, those pure profit sales that will be balancing the books, given how aggressively we spent, particularly our first 2 seasons, like coming back up to the Premier League, and that we're not generating much money elsewhere. It kind of makes sense, and I don't know how hamstrung the club is financially, but we'll just kind of have to see. It's going to be an interesting one. I don't think we will sell JHON Duran, but Chelsea are still serious and they're sniffing around him in the summer. Then I think that's a completely different proposition.
100%, mate, 100%. And I would implore anyone who wants to understand Villa's financial outlay more to check out Up the Villa podcast. Luke did a really good episode with Kieran Maguire, whose book I have read more times than I can count, and I can't read it anymore because it gives me dissertation PTSD. I almost said PSD then. It's not a bloody Photoshop file, is it? But no, Kieran Maguire is like the GOAT when it comes to football finance. And Luke did a really, really good interview with him the other day. So I think it will sort of provide a lot of context to, the kind of decisions you alluded to earlier, mate, in terms of lower grounds, new stadium, all those ugly, horrible things that we don't like and we don't like talking about, but have to sometimes. So yeah, there's a very interesting perspective there. Very interesting perspective. In terms of balancing books, mate, and I think balancing squads as well, because, we've been saying this for a while, a fully fit squad that we have, when we have everybody back, I think we probably have 1 or 2 players that too many. I don't think Unai really likes having massive squads. And in probably what I would can only describe as the strangest transfer of the January window. It appears that Leander Dendoncker is a Napoli player right now. And if that doesn't describe the state of affairs that Napoli are in right now, then I don't know what does. And there is no disrespect intended at all to Leander Dendoncker. He is a man who is good at what he does and does what he's good at. Do you know what I mean? There's no there's no flash play. He's not trying. He doesn't try and do things he isn't capable of. He's just this gangly guy who goes around putting out fires in the midfield. And I've got a lot of respect for players like that. But this has to be the most mediocre transfer Napoli could have made in the entire window. We're talking about a loan with an option to buy for €7 million at the end. Note I said option, not obligation. And what are they smoking over there? Honestly, what are they? They've been so mid this season, mate. They have been so painfully mid. And this is a team that won the Scudetto last season by, I believe it was 16 points. They were 16 points clear at the end of the season. And they have, I don't want to say slumped to a point where they're looking to sign Dendoncker to shore up their midfield, because again, I don't mean to disrespect him at all, but it just doesn't scream Scudetto.
No. I think this is good business. Apparently, there's an option to buy Leander at the end of this short-term loan at the end of the season for around €10 million, which I actually think is really good business by us, to be fair. Like, if we can get him off the books, if they do activate that, then that's only around €5 million for what we paid for him originally from Wolves. And that was someone that was playing quite a lot of football for Wolves. I think for him, it's worth mentioning that he is 28 years old. He's not kind of in his 30s or anything like that. He's a very good age, particularly for the kind of profile and where he plays. I think the defensive midfielders coming up to their late 20s and early 30s, you're going to get a lot of good football out of Leander Dendoncker. But considering that his stock will have dropped dramatically over the time that he's been at Villa, he's not played a lot of football for us at all. And then it's interesting that we're still able to get that kind of money out of it. I mean, he's only made 36 appearances for Villa since he came, and whilst that doesn't sound too bad, however, so many of those are substitute appearances, and he's never really kind of found his feet at the club. And it's been clear for a little while that we were open to a move there. It's interesting that it's kind of come now and not in the summer, because he's actually played, as we got through the Christmas period particularly, obviously kind of had peaks with that away goal at Old Trafford. Played quite a bit of football recently, and in some quite important games as well. You think, he played quite a fair bit of the second half in that home win against Arsenal. It suddenly started to feel that he was really coming out of the woodwork to play, I'm not going to say a prominent role, but definitely a significantly increased role to what he had kind of just a couple of months earlier. It seems that Unai's got real faith in Tim Iroegbunam, which is not surprises me, but not in a way that is disrespectful to Tim's ability, just in terms of it kind of felt that Tim's moment may have passed him by a little bit. It kind of felt that his stock was really high prior to that loan at QPR. He didn't have a great time there. There was obviously that kind of, I think he played a game without completing a pass or something like that, and he kind of came back on loan, and he just seemed really on the periphery of the first team squad. But it's interesting to learn that Unai rates him really highly, and that he's going to trust him to play Leander's role at the club, which, if anything like the last few months is to go by, and considering that, European football will return in a month or two, that could be quite a lot of football for Tim.
It could, mate. It could. I think, and kind of to circle back to my point earlier, it's a young player. Unai can mould in the way he wants. He's clearly a player with bags of potential, bags of ability, and it's just about nurturing that and really getting the best out of him. But I mean, it felt like for at least 12 hours that the Dendoncker hole that is left in the squad was going to be filled by Florian Neuhaus of Borussia Mönchengladbach. Try saying that 3 times over. But Fabrizio has kind of said that we've not made an offer. We've not, the a loan hasn't been discussed, which was very different to what was initially being reported a few days ago. We're going to talk about it nevertheless, because this is a signing that I can get behind 100%. 100%. Big fan of Florian Neuhaus. Big fan of the Bundesliga, as you guys know. And in terms of profile, in terms of ability, in terms of just general play, it's nothing like Leander Dendoncker. I think, to sort of compare him to a player in the Villa squad, he is probably closer in style, not necessarily ability, to a Douglas Luiz rather than a Leander Dendoncker, which is interesting because, as you say, mate, we're kind of looking for that. You can call it Dendoncker replacement if you like. You can call it Kamara backup if you like. You tag that however you will. But Neuhaus is someone who's just really comfortable in transition. So far this season in the Bundesliga, he's scored 3 goals in 15 appearances from an expected goals tally of 1.7. I'm a big fan of this guy, and maybe there's a slight bias because he was a part of a very successful Football Manager save that I had. But rest assured, I have seen this guy play plenty of times, and it feels low risk. One, because it's not actually happening apparently, but two, we were discussing it as a loan with an option to buy again, sort of try before you buy, see how it goes. He's receiving 3.54 progressive passes per 90, 82.5% pass completion rate. He's averaging about 43 passes per game, pretty standard for a midfielder, averaging 5.17 progressive passes per game. Always looking to receive the ball on the front foot, continue to get that ball forward. A player who, again, as I say, glides in transition, has a bit of an eye for goal as well. This is getting my endorsement, mate. We've said recently about us sort of repping Villa players that have ended up being quite bad. This is a hill that I am willing to die on. Florian Neuhaus, get him in. This isn't Bjarnason. This isn't Wesley. This isn't Keenan Davis even. This is where the tide turns, mate. This is a guy who I can rep with my chest.
Mate, honestly, I would begrudge to add even too many more words there. Like, that is a fantastic summary there. I can add not much more than what you just said. Yeah, I think he's a really interesting player. It's interesting that he's thrived in quite a few different positions as well. The different managers, you look at what they're doing at the moment, and it's very different to what they were doing. And someone like Daniel Farke was different to Adi Hutter or Marco Rosa. They're playing. He's been very consistent in a lot of different roles under a lot of different managers, which is usually a good sign. It's interesting to see. Yeah, loans is probably the way that this will go. If Villa do anything in this window, it seems that loans could be an interesting way to kind of circumvent those FFP SKFP regulations that I was just talking about. So I think that side of it does make sense. It's an interesting profile, and I think he would come in. And, with Dendoncker, I say, if it is Tim to step up, those are some big boots to fill. I still believe that maybe there are some other bigger holes in the squad to fill. But yeah, let's see, mate. Let's see.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And, this is a guy who's played in different systems as well, as you alluded to, mate. I think Gladbach this season have quite often played a back five. So he's sort of been in a midfield 3, midfield 2 at times as well. So it's good to know that he's got that sort of tactical flexibility. And if you actually look at FBref's player comparison, the top player on that list, mate, is none other than John McGinn. Very interesting. Definitely doesn't have a back quite as big as Guinea's, but it'll do.
Does?
Well, who does exactly? We shouldn't hold people to such an impossible standard, mate. This unattainable beauty, it's not fair to everybody else, is it? But